working in the CRAs, working with the NACs, all we were trying to do back then was keep it alive. Many of you have been at this for quite a long time. You remember those days, taking money away, adding money, directors changing, coming and going. But the constant was the loyalty and the talent and the commitment to so many of you that are in this room. That is truly what kept the CRA program and kept the 7 different individual areas basically for those days between 2008 and 2012 almost on life support, if you will. And then we went into what I call our dark period, where the majority changed, and this is not about politics, it's about policy and it's about what folks were looking for. And all of you are very well aware that the commitment to the CRAs and to the individual areas that were just starting to see some progress through the leadership of Kevin Freeman went really into the defense mode. And genuinely, if it wasn't for the folks that said, we will not be run off, we will not give up our vision, we have worked too hard on this for too many years to stop now. During those tough years, had the group given up, none of this would exist anymore. The money would have been washed back into the general fund. All of the NACs were disbanded and would have stayed that way. And all of the neighborhoods and all of the effort and all of the work would have faded away. So as someone who was out of office for those 4 years, I was as nervous as many other folks about who will shepherd this through. And the people that did are dedicated Martin County staff, but more importantly, were you folks that were volunteers that continue to go to meetings, continue to fight. We're not going to take the dismantling of the CRAs lying down. And I personally, and so many other Martin County residents, owe you such a debt of gratitude. Let's give you all a round of applause for that effort. Then we had a new day. Okay? I believe that Kevin Freeman and Kate Parmalee and now Susan Corus and the team that they lead kept this going and kept the dream of each of the individual communities alive, and now it's different. Now we can have evenings like this. Now we can come back and talk about funding projects, taking design and engineering plans from just a plan to a reality. I live here in Palm City. I work off of Map Road. Every single day we can see the progress. I go to the NAC meetings. I see that there's a new commitment. There's a new spirit. The folks that were longtime volunteers and supporters of the CRA, and all the fresh new faces, people that said, I want to get involved now. My volunteering of my time is now worth it because I see progress and I see happy and new exciting things happening. So tonight is an exciting night because the future in all of our NACs and CRAs are so bright. We have such a dedicated group at each of the NAC levels that then send representatives up to the CRA. We have the who's who of our community, really, that know their communities better than anyone. And I think a turning point, and many of you were there, if you remember, I don't know if it was a Monday or a Tuesday after the 4th of July weekend when they had an event at the Blake Library. Now look, we got a very nice crowd here. We have fantastic, delicious La Borgata food. That always draws a lot of people. And so, but on the day or two after the 4th of July weekend at the Blake Library, it was capacity. We had a sheriff's deputy standing at the door, and it was literally like a New York City nightclub. You could only enter when someone exited. It was a 1-for-1. And there was probably 20 or 30 of us standing in the lobby, in the hallway outside of the Armstrong wing, just waiting to get in and hear the good news. So I think that sent a really important message to the folks on the commission at the time that said, we're not interested in this. we don't want it. I think the message, and Commissioner Smith is here, and he'll tell you, he's been at this a long, long time. That was probably one of the largest groups and the most resounding, we're not going to let you do something to us that we don't want, that I have ever encountered. I'm sure a lot of our longtime staff would feel the same way. Kevin Freeman, and you remember, he's a mild, modest man, a humble man, and we were all cheering for him and giving him accolades, and he was petrified. He didn't know what to do because he's got commissioners that didn't really like this, and then he has the public saying what an awesome job he was doing. And that really showed me a commitment to the purpose and to the function of what we're trying to accomplish here. It could not have sent a louder message, if not to the commissioners, that I believe Harold Jenkins' whole commission term was born of his frustration of what was happening in the CRA program and what was happening or not happening in Hobe Sound. I believe we have his talent and his passion on the board today because of the way the Hobe Sound CRA was being treated. So that's an awesome byproduct of what happened during what I call the dark period. Okay, but the sunshine is shining, the future is remarkably bright. We're thinking now about what other projects can we work on? What's next for all of the areas? And the nicest part about it all is that it's very fair. It's not like one community's getting something and others are complaining. Everything is moving all at the same time. It's exciting everywhere you go. And so when we talked about, Ted Astolfi and Susan and I said, hey, we want to have a CRA event, we want to have some training, we want to have a little celebration, we want to bring some folks and rev people up. I said, well, first off, I have the perfect location. But secondly, it's the perfect time. Funding is in place, the talent is in place inside the building, the passion and the talent is in place in all of the CRAs, and it could not be a more exciting time than now. And so I was very happy to be invited to come and welcome you all and to introduce someone who's done a remarkable job of leading all of the different entities and making sure everyone feels included. And it's the chairman of the CRA, Mr. Rick Zurich. Have a fantastic evening. Thank you for all your service, and the future is bright.
Thank you, Commissioner Campy. I got to tell you, I didn't plan on saying this, but having been almost 20 years involved in CRA, I never thought I would hear a speech like that from county commissioners. What do you say? How about that? Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you to our current county commissioners for the support that they offer our CRAs. Well, we're at a point in our CRAs, like I said, I've been involved almost 20 years. CRAs go for a period of 30 years unless they get renewed. They do have the opportunity to go further than that. But we're more than halfway through the lives of our CRAs, and we've been working for a long time on vision. Now, you'll hear me later in the program. I'll review some of the accomplishments that we've made, but it's time to take the next big step. And Commissioner Campy couldn't have explained it more about an exciting time where we go from vision to implementation. We've got to start doing things. We've got an opportunity in front of us now to have real action taken in our CRAs. And while we were discussing this program, we thought there's got to be other CRAs that have been at this threshold, where you've spent years working and improving your vision, working on the infrastructure. How do you get the actual development to start? And that's what spawned this meeting. And so we've got a couple of groups here this evening that are real experts in this and are going to tell us where we should be or how we can easily go from vision to implementation. The first gentleman I'd like to introduce is Mr. Tim Henderson. He's with New Urban Communities. New Urban Communities was founded 17 years ago, and they design and build communities based on a few simple principles. Principles like people prefer spending time with family and friends, people appreciate good design, and people prefer to live close to employment, entertainment, shopping, and cultural destinations. That sounds sensible, right? Tim is here tonight to give us the developer's perspective on working with CRAs. Please join me in welcoming Tim Hernandez of New Urban Communities. Tim? Thank you. I think he's got the other mic.
All right, thank you. I'm glad to be here. Mike Bush had called me. I kind of thought I was going to be sitting around a table with like about 10 people, so this is a little more than what I thought it was going to be. So I've known Mike for many, many years. We've worked together in many different forums and arenas, and I have nothing but the greatest of respect for everything he's done, not just for Martin County and the Treasure Coast, but for all of South Florida. I mean, the fact that he's leaving makes me very sad, but he deserves it. So, anyway, so I came here today. What they asked me to do is give you a little bit of a take on CRAs from a developer's perspective. And so, let me make sure I have my, what did I do with the clicker they gave me? Well, did I leave it on the table? There we go. That'll help. All right, so we've had the good fortune, in most cases, not always, of developing a number of projects that are located within CRAs. So I'm going to show you some pictures of those projects, but before I do that, I'm going to kind of tell you what I think, tell you a little bit about us, and then tell you a little bit about what some of the pros and cons are from a developer's perspective, some of the things that we think about when we're developing. Boy, and I cannot see that. but I'll tell you about New Urban. We've been around 20 years, and we have our whole focus was urban infill and redevelopment. I used to work for a big public home builder, Pulte Homes, and I really wanted to I saw that a lot of the places that we were building, first in Chicago and then in South Florida, were on the periphery, on the fringe, and they were really just part of urban sprawl, and I didn't like that, and I thought there was a better way. I fortunately got introduced to some of the new urbanist people like Mike, but also like Andreas Duani, Victor Dover, Joe Cole, that were living in South Florida and espousing a different kind of development where people could live closer to where they worked. But what we found is that that would typically have to happen on smaller pieces of land closer to where there's existing infrastructure typically, but closer to existing downtowns, many transitional areas, oftentimes in CRAs. And so what we found was that the big guys didn't want to mess with that. The Lennars, the Centex, Pultes, D.R. Hortons of the world. And it was, how much time do you want to spend on a 20 or 30 unit development? That's really not what they wanted to do. Things are changing a little bit now because they're finding the bigger pieces almost impossible to get. But so what we decided was we would come in and try to start doing what is very difficult for like a small guy who's going to build 4 townhouses or a few single family homes to do, which is try to create a sense of community. And so what we found is that the communities that had the CRAs were where some of those opportunities were. So we went to places like Del Rey. Our first piece of property that we developed was a bank, old SunTrust Bank drive-through, a block south of Atlantic Avenue between US 1 north to south in Delray Beach. And what we were able to find out was that there was a demand to live in this kind of a place. We were really, truly pioneers in that. And so it was quite a revelation, I think, for a lot of people. I remember when we opened up that project, we had all the big builders, they would come through like, what are these guys doing? And so we found out that we had struck a little bit of a chord. What we were doing resonated with a lot of people, and the cities liked it because we were drawing basically middle-class people back in the areas that they had fled, and that was really a good thing. So hopefully could you turn down that one spotlight a little bit? It would be great. I don't know if you could. I can read what I'm saying. So I made a list here of a few of the advantages and disadvantages of working with CRAs from a developer's standpoint. You know, one of the good things is they're usually close to, in many cases, workplace, but other cases, shopping and entertainment, things that people like. In theory, because you're working with the CRA, which has, in some cases, a close association with the city or the jurisdiction you're building in other cases, not so much. You theoretically have an advocate that helps you navigate the entitlement process, which a little more easily. That's a big problem. I mean, one of the negatives, I'll tell you, is that sometimes when the CRA and the governing authority not on the same page, I mean, it's like having two separate processes, and it makes it worse than normal. So another thing is that there's oftentimes there's public investment in infrastructure. Delray is a great example of that. They invested millions of dollars to take, Atlantic Avenue, and it took them 20 years. Didn't happen overnight, but the change that was evident just in the physical improvements, whether it's sidewalks, whether it's street lights, to make people feel that it was safe to go into these areas, to invest, their biggest investment in their life, their house, to buy a home in a CRA, to open a business in a CRA. That's crucial. I mean, you have to put your mind in the eye always from a developer. We try to put ourselves in the shoes of a consumer, whether the consumer is a renter, a home buyer, or a business person that might want to rent space from us. And we want to make sure that we can at least have, in their eyes, as good an experience, as safe an investment as they would in a more quote-unquote safe suburban location. And if you can't do that, then they're not going to come. And if they do come, they're going to be asking for major discounts. And it's expensive to build, it's expensive to develop, it's risky. You have to satisfy your investors and your lenders. And if you can't do that, then you're not going to get it built. Typically, another advantage of dealing with CRAs that we found as a developer is typically the CRAs, because they have an objective that they're trying to achieve, goals and objectives that they've oftentimes set forth in a CRA plan of some sort, then they're going to be willing to work with you and be more understanding and more patient in the process, and they might give you an extension, whereas a private developer will say, I'll give you an extension, but pay me $50,000 for it. And the CRA has something else in mind, typically, other than just making more money. They're looking at the long-term investment in the community and making the community better and seeing development as a catalyst to other development, whereas a private property owner just looks at it like, all I really care, I don't care whether it's a catalyst for future development, I just care about making as much as I can, as quick as I can. So the fact that CRAs generate TIF allows them to think more long term, and they'll typically be, since unlike a normal private property owner who's selling me a piece of property, they're going to get a stream of revenues in the future. They'll take that into account, and so your upfront cost is typically, more reasonable. Your terms are more reasonable, and that allows us to make deals potentially work that otherwise we wouldn't be able to make work. Disadvantages, by definition, I mean, a CRA, it had to meet some criteria of slum and blight, quote unquote. Now, there's obviously, you draw a map, and some areas are better than others, and so, we can be doing development in a CRA, and it's not necessarily blighted per se, but what is true is that typically you're going to be a pioneer. Okay, so if you're a pioneer, that means you have to convince your lenders, your investors, to finance you, and all those other good things that the CRA can do are instrumental in helping, convince them that it's a wise thing to do. Another problem that we run into all the time with the CRAs, it's public land a lot of times that you're dealing with that may be owned by the jurisdiction. And so in those cases, they'll put out an RFP or an RFQ. Now, RFPs and RFQs, you have to do drawings, you have to do designs. In some cases, you have to do pro formas. And you should always do a pro forma. Some people don't. That's one of my pet peeves. So that's a lengthy, expensive process, and 5 people respond, and then you lose. It's like you lose a couple of these things in a row, and pretty soon you say, forget it. I'm not doing this ever again because it's just a waste of time. If I can contract for a piece of property that's not in a CRA, just from a private property owner, or even in a CRA with a private property owner, I don't have to worry about the beauty contest or the competition. So, we're always concerned about political change. I've got a project right now down in Broward County where I had a 4-to-1 vote of support. I signed a development agreement, and then the 1 now multiplied to 3, the 4 changed to 2, and now we're suing them because they're not honoring their development agreement. So you'll be able to read about that in the paper if you haven't already. There's a lot of times CRAs, and I'm a planner. That's I have an MBA, but I also have an urban planning degree. So by nature, and the fact I'm a developer, I'm optimistic. The fact that I'm a planner means I'm somewhat idealistic. But sitting on the government side or on the CRA side, my advice is you really have to try to be in the shoes and see as much as you can the way the developer is looking at things, because a lot of times CRAs, I found, will try to impose their views on what should be on a piece of property, and sometimes it's fine, it's totally aligned with market realities, but other times it's not. Many times it's not. And so there's a process where we have to say, well, yeah, we can do that, but we can't do this, or vice versa. And so that's something I think that's really important to understand, that what the CRA, if you want to see stuff get built, okay, as opposed to just seeing plans that never get built, then there has to be some reconciliation of dreams and reality. And I think that's a really, really important thing to think about. I think too, when you do have pieces of property that you're putting out for RFPs and RFQs, I've seen it happen. Just happened to us in Oakland Park, where it was between us and one other group, and we lost, and we call it the fashion show syndrome. Basically, they came up with, hired a super expensive Miami architect. It was South American money, never built anything in Broward County, and they're trying to get their money out of Venezuela as fast as they can. And so that might be good for the community, because maybe something will get built. But they put together a plan that absolutely is not going to work. And I promise you, it'll never get built with the plan that they designed. I live a mile from this site. I live in Fort Lauderdale. It's right across from the Funky Buddha. And the fact of the matter is, what these guys proposed is like what could work in Miami Beach. It will never work. And they put way more. The rents are $10 a square foot, okay? And they're building this space that they'll be so underwater on, there's no sustainability to that. And then they're building, housing over the top of parking, which is the most expensive way to do it, as opposed to, if you're gonna have a parking structure, have it separated so that it's cost effective to build. Something basic. There's things that you can do in Miami Beach and in Miami, it just doesn't work in Fort Lauderdale, it doesn't work in Oakland Park, it's not gonna work in Delray Beach, it's not gonna work in Stewart. So you have to think about what's really gonna work, and just because they show a pretty picture or a video, that doesn't mean that you should be giving them the deal, because 2 years, 3 years down the road, they're gonna tell you that it doesn't work, and then you're gonna be back to square one and nothing will have happened. So I say, when you do put out RFPs and RFQs, make sure that somebody provides you at least a little bit of market research and a pro forma to show you that they thought it through, and they just didn't hire an architect who designed a pretty plan. So the last point I kind of made already, it can be a lengthier process from start to finish, because you have to go through the CRA process and you have to go through the city process, as opposed to just going out and buying a piece of property and starting the city process immediately. You know, hopefully that's overcome by the fact that the CRA and the city hopefully have goals that are aligned, and they'll help expedite your entitlement process. So I'm just going to show you a couple different pieces of property that we've done in CRAs, and they run the gamut: single family, townhomes, mixed use projects, all up and down, mostly in Broward and Palm Beach, but now we're getting ready to do the project in downtown Stewart on the famous Triangle property. So Old Palm Grove, this was on the North Federal Highway corridor of Delray Beach, which is really just like strip or used car dealers, and they wanted to transform it. And so we went in and we were able to get, I think I got like 20 variances / waivers, special exceptions, / internal adjustments on this project. And we sold it basically because we did some townhomes in a new urbanist format facing on US 1 with the parking in the rear, and small lot single family homes on really like 3,000 or 4,000 square foot lots. And the city loved what we did. They always point to this as one of the most beautiful projects that's ever been done. And I think because of all those good things that CRAs can do, don't just settle. Hold the developers accountable to higher design standards. You should do it. A legitimate developer will not complain about that, okay? Somebody who's just trying to get in and get out and make a quick buck, they may complain. This is where this was. This is on US 1, which was horrible. It's changed dramatically since this project. It was truly a catalyst for other stuff to happen in that corridor. You can see like how far east it was, the intercoastal and then the ocean. Actually in the background, that was, it's like Gulfstream on the other side of the intercoastal. Okay, so this CODA, this was a former drug rehab that we got in Delray Beach, downtown Delray, just west of the Sunday House, in what they call the Southwest neighborhood, largely Haitian, okay, largely African American in that area. We went in, we were the first people in that quadrant of town to do anything in probably 50 years, and we were like close walking distance from the courthouse, and so this was the first kind of market rate affordable housing project, that we did, that we were able. They gave us an incentive there to double the density. We were allowed 12 units an acre by right. By providing some workforce housing units in this project, which we did, we were able to double the density to 24 units an acre. I think maybe we got to 22 units an acre. And we wrote them a check for some money. I think it was like $200,000. We provided 6 units within the development, and then we built 2 single-family detached homes in the neighborhood, in the West Settlers neighborhood, directly just north of Atlantic, about 3 blocks away from this site. So we really contributed. I think the city would tell you they love this project. It was kind of a groundbreaking project in a lot of ways, because we were the pioneers, the first people to do anything under the workforce housing ordinance, and also the first project in this Southwest neighborhood. Probably one of the most notable projects that we got the most probably publicity and recognition for was called Atlantic Grove. This is 2 blocks west of the tennis center in downtown Delray. So again, I mean, when I had this property under contract, there were 2 murders within blocks of this site, okay? I was like, what are we doing? But we had 2 not-for-profits, local not-for-profits, that we partnered with on this deal. We cobbled together all kinds of financing from LISC, from Florida Community Loan Fund, and we did, and from, at the time, it was Wachovia Bank. They're not there anymore. And so we basically built 55 townhomes. There were, and 2 mixed-use buildings fronting right on Atlantic. And so we moved some local neighborhood business in there, an African-American salon, a local market that was in there, and we also got a few restaurants and sub shops and pizza places and things like that too. And it worked out really, really great. I mean, it was a fantastic project, and we had on the mixed-use buildings on the the slide in the upper right-hand corner, we had retail on the first floor, office on the second floor, and then residential lofts on the third floor. It would be almost impossible to finance that today because Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and FHA have all kinds of requirements about the percentage of residential you can have in a mixed-use building, and if it's more than 25% or even 20%, I think in the case of FHA, you can't. FHA won't insure the mortgages of the buyers, and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac won't buy those mortgages, and they won't accept them into secondary mortgage pools. So that's a big killer to mixed-use development. It makes it very, very difficult. It makes you go really high, which then is so costly, and you can't park it in many locations. So it's a problem. That's where this is, west of Swinton. And Swinton, that was the line for years, historically, in Delray between, the white neighborhoods and the black neighborhoods. West of Swinton was the African-American neighborhoods. And so this was truly a pioneering project. We started this in like 2004, finished it about 3 or 4 years later, just in time for the market crash. A really interesting project. I know Sharon's going to talk a little bit about this, that we're doing in Pompano Beach. It's a great location. It's in the CRA, but it's an old parking lot and surrounded by thousands of condominiums of people that are very, at least at the start, were very ornery, put it that way. And I went around and met with them all, with Sharon's boss, Kim Briesmeister. We went, to meeting after meeting after meeting, breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever, talking to these people and, telling them that what we want to do here is going to be transformational to them. Because these were basically, Pompano always was the kind of like the stepchild, the redheaded stepchild, if you will, to Fort Lauderdale. But it was surrounded by Fort Lauderdale, Sea Ranch Lakes, Lighthouse Point, many affluent, Hillsborough Beach, many, many affluent areas, and even the east side of Pompano. And they just had some problems, political problems, like happens, and they had a hard time getting out of their own way for years and years and years. But they had a great mayor, Lamar Fisher. I have respect for him, one of the best mayors I've ever met. He is great at bringing people together and sees the long-term picture. His family's lived in Pompano Beach. I think one of his grandparents or great-grandparents was a mayor, commissioner, 70 years ago or something like that, but they were one of the founding families. He has a lot of credibility, and it takes that. It takes, a lot of times, it takes political leadership to make these things reality. You can't rely just on your planning department because, how much trouble do I want to get in as a city planner? I respect the ones who do, but they might be gone, shortly thereafter if they fall on the sword too much, or if they take too much risk in terms of advocating for certain projects. But Lamar was fantastic. So these are pictures, renderings, but it's turning into pictures. The one in the upper left, that's built, it's open now. And so we've got our first restaurants coming. We're attracting restaurants to an area that never before had any. Actually, the city, interestingly enough, they passed a charter amendment, no residential on this property. We had to lease it, we couldn't buy it. And so we signed a long-term lease with the city, 50 years only, which is not that long, really. It's long enough to get financing, but not much, not by much. So we've got Kilwins, we've got BurgerFi coming in, we've got 2 independents. And what we found in this project, and you'll find this in a lot of CRAs, you're not going to get the chains. They don't want to come there. The excuse here, not enough daytime employment, not enough hotels in the immediate area, so we're not interested. Like Bloomin' Brands, which is like Outback Steakhouse, and Fleming's and Carrabba's, I think, and Darden, which is, was Olive Garden, I don't know if it still is, Red Lobster. They just slam the door in our face. We're not interested. So you have to find, typically, whether it's a developer, whether it's tenants, and even if for residential, a lot of times you have to get people who are a little more independent thinking, who are willing to come to areas like this. So whenever you shrink the pool of potential tenants, or residents, it makes it harder to market. You know, your velocity is slower, your returns potentially are lower. You have to somehow offset that to make these kind of deals work. So that's kind of a 3D photorealistic rendering of what it's going to look like when it's done, and you can see the existing condos in the area. This is really great project. This is what we're doing in downtown Stewart on the Triangle property. I mean, believe me, that's a challenging project. We have the railroad tracks going by it, but we have also the great downtown Stewart. You know, all the restaurants, the shops, the Riverwalk, you know, the Heisinger's Marina a couple blocks away. I mean, I'm a big believer. I see in downtown Stewart what we saw in Delray Beach almost 20 years ago when it was just starting. I see the same thing, and I feel like, you know, we're going to be, you know, very successful here. I mean, we're a little bit of a pioneer with this kind of a project and this scale of a project, but we've got all our equity lined up, we've got all our loans lined up, and we're getting ready to close on those in a couple weeks, and you'll start to see us working out there hopefully in the next 30 to 60 days. And it's very exciting. You know, I hope I'm not the one, like they say, you know, the pioneers are the ones with the arrows in their back. I hope that's not us here. I don't think so. We feel very excited about this. And again, I mean, the city of Stewart's been great to work with. And I think that this is gonna be truly a catalyst for more residential in the downtown, which will help support those businesses that we all love down there and make them you know, able to sustain themselves for a long period of time. That's just the site plan of it. So this is a project, and this is an example of a project that we spent a ton of time, ton of effort on. This was the 3 blocks on Atlantic Avenue west of Swinton, between 95 and Swinton, that the CRA put out 5 years ago. Okay, we hired Rick Gonzalez from West Palm Beach. We worked together, came with a great site plan, great architectural design for this. We got recommended by staff. We got recommended by the advisory board, and then it got to the CRA, which in Delray, up until about a month ago, was a separate entity from the city. And so the night of the award, the other group, there was 3 groups, and we had the recommendation, and we were assuming we were going to get it, but we got out politicked. The other group, who was from Ireland, never built one thing ever in the United States, and offered $4 million less for the property than us, came in with about 50 local residents. And there was a general contractor, an African-American general contractor, that they said, we're gonna give him the deal to build this. Now the guy, it was way beyond his capabilities to do. And so all these people stood up one after another and said, give it to this person. And we're all for local hiring, we're all for local participation. Our management team, we had a 50% African-American group that was 50-50 with us on this deal. But they didn't grow up, the guy didn't grow up in the neighborhood. And so they gave it to them, and so here's like some of the plans and stuff like that. So now I'm going to show you what the property looks like 5 years later. All right? So, I mean, I think this is just a cautionary tale. You know, do your homework, try to find reputable people who can get the job done. Because there's a lot of people out there who can talk, who can draw pretty pictures, but can't get the job done. And, you know, that's something. This was a project in Oakland Park. I talked about that again. They gave to the people from South America. And, you know, and I'm not trying to be America first by any means up here. I'm just trying to say that, you know, do your homework, do the, you know, make sure that who you're getting involved with are people that are qualified to do the job. So, and this is a project in Margate. Again, we have this property under contract, have a development agreement signed with the CRA, had an unbelievably great land plan designed by Victor Dover and Joe Cole, and it's on a transit corridor. The city, this is, I'll just give you a little bit of a synopsis. So the city puts out an RFP, and they say, and RMA can tell you all about this too, because they were involved as well. But they put out an RFP, they say, we've rezoned all this property, it's like 35, 36 acres, transit-oriented corridor. It's right on 441. 441 is that divided road that goes right up the middle, curvy road up the middle. And it's got 50,000 cars a day on it. It's got the #1 transit ridership in Broward County because it goes through more affordable areas. So we come in, and there used to be a Publix here. There's a couple shopping centers that have like a beauty supply store. I mean, it's just, that's like the best use they have, basically. And so it needs more people, and it needs more younger people to move in. And here we are trying to do something. There's a well-documented shortage of affordable housing just about everywhere you go in South Florida. And so here we are trying to create something that's really nice, that's really got, that's affordable for the kind of people that the city purportedly wants to bring into their community. So they apply for a land use amendment to Broward County to get the 1,000, 1,500 more units, not just for this property, but for their whole area. So then the board flips from, Broward County approves it. The board flips from 4-1 kind of pro-development to 3-2 anti-development, and they say, you know what, we're not going to honor our development agreement. Good luck trying to get this approved. They turned down the land use plan amendment that it was initiated by the city. They turned down their own land use amendment. So they not only, screwed us, they screwed everybody else in their town. Really brilliant. So we're suing them. We'll see what happens. And that concludes my presentation on the developer's perspective.
Thank you, Tim, for an enlightening aspect from a developer's point of view. One of many things that I take home from his presentation is the uniqueness of each CRA, and I think we are well aware of that. We deal with that on a daily basis here in Martin County. Although we have 7 CRAs, we have 7 unique CRAs. The next group I'd like to introduce is Redevelopment Management Associates, better known as RMA. RMA is an experienced full-service consulting and management firm specializing in revitalizing core areas and corridors for cities, counties, and special districts nationwide. RMA brings together a phenomenal team of redevelopment experts passionate about building better communities. Tonight we have with us Sharon McCormick, the Director of Business Attraction and Marketing, and Farrell Tiller, Economic Development Project Manager, to talk about capitalizing on your authentic identity. Again, uniqueness. Positioning your CRA district for success. Sharon and Farrell.
So, thank you very much for having us, and I'm actually delighted that Tim Hernandez went first because he really teed me up for everything. So it worked out beautifully. We've worked with Tim and his development company several times in Margate as well, and we're not working in Margate anymore, just say that right off the bat. And tonight, I really want to just give you some information about who we are. We are a redevelopment firm. Our principals are Kim Briesmeister and Chris Brown, and they have over 50 years combined. Chris Brown was the executive director of the Delray Beach CRA, the first ever executive director. So he really laid the foundation in Delray Beach for what you see today. And then Kim Briesmeister was in Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood, and West Palm Beach. So they have great amount of experience, and they've written a book called Reinventing Your City, 8 Steps to Turn Your City Around. The first 3 steps is, first one is on your screen on your tonight's program is vision. So it's really about vision, leadership, and the team. So we know you have a vision, you're headed towards that vision, you have the leadership now, and you also have the team. So you're really on your way. So we're gonna share some stories with you. We're a multidisciplinary firm, so I am the director of economic development. I'm channeling my inner Kevin. I'm the director of business attraction and marketing, and Farrell's in our economic development division. We have we do we deal in real estate, urban design and planning, and government management and administration. So almost all of us on our team have actually worked inside CRAs, inside city halls. I was in the city of West Palm Beach 15 years ago as the marketing director for the West Palm Beach CRA. So we come from a place where we have this practical experience that we know what you're going through when we're working with you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Farrell. We lovingly refer to him as our research director or our research guru, and he's going to talk you through some analytics and things like that. Here you go, Farrell.
All righty, thanks, Sharon. And as Sharon mentioned, my name's Farrell Tiller. I'm Economic Development Project Manager at RMA. We just recently worked with the Martin County CRAs, updating the CRA plan. So, and my mom, who's also here tonight, lives in Port Salerno, so we're very familiar with this area and happy to be here in Martin County tonight. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about some economic development principles and how we apply these in the CRAs that we work in. So economic development is a lot more than just retail, manufacturing, and industry. It's building wealth in the community, entrepreneurship, creating jobs, investment, and enhancing quality of life in the tax base. And so one of the things that we do in our approach, we try to put ourselves in the minds of people like Tim, developers, business folks, investors, and we really want to know what are the things that they're looking for, what are the questions that they're asking, and so that's, is there a market for what I want to do, or can I create one? Is the location appropriate, and is there spaces available and affordable? And what do I have to do to get open? How bad will that be, and how long will that process take? And so we look at market-driven investment and incentivized business investment. And what that means is this. So market-driven, that means, if a developer comes in and the market characteristics aren't where they need to be, that developer has a certain threshold that they're going to have to meet, a certain return that they're going to want to get. And if the current market doesn't support that investment, then their incentives are needed to catalyze that investment. And so some of the examples of incentives can be financial incentives like grants, loans, rebates, and also zoning incentives, zoning changes. And this slide is just kind of showing those four things coming together. And really the key to our approach is this idea that cash flow is king, right? Cash flow customers are the key to business self-sufficiency and success. And there's only two things that can improve cash flow: increasing revenues and reducing expenses. And so this is kind of the core of our approach, that cash flow is king, and the most important incentive is the market. Also, that local government is an obstacle to economic development, no matter how hard it tries to be. And we're not saying that government's the bad guy. You have to have regulations in place in order to operate effectively and efficiently. But, overregulation is a bad thing. So, and then the last thing we like to say is economic development is inevitable, but where it occurs is not. And so while we hear all the time governments can't operate like businesses, that's true, but government can adopt the same customer service principles that businesses have. And that's responsiveness, information, and credibility. Responsiveness to your customers, which are your residents and businesses, making sure whatever you do is in the context and character of what they want to see in the community. Also, the information that you're giving out to these people, make sure that it's relevant and available. And also credibility of your city leadership, but also the city's reputation. Tim talked a little bit about Margate and that deal that kind of went south. That's one way cities can develop a bad reputation that will scare away investment, developers, and businesses. So the next thing we look at, we have these 5 drivers of economic development, which is land, the real estate market, capital, money markets, regulatory environment, consumer markets, and also labor and workforce. And this can work differently in any community. Like Tim said, you know, what you can put in Miami Beach versus what you put in Oakland Park might be a little bit different. So here in Miami Beach, those 5 drivers might look like this. You have a huge market. You also have a highly regulated market. Lots of capital available, but not much land. In West Palm Beach, it might look a little more like this, and in Stewart here. So that's one of the things that we look at when we go into these projects. You know, how do these 5 drivers affect economic development, and how can we work that into our plan? And then we look at these common business climate themes. And these are the things that keep coming up when we meet with residents, when we meet with businesses, when we meet with city staff. What are the things that rise to the top that we keep hearing over and over and over again? You know, is there a perception of crime? Is there poor customer service? Is there opportunities for development? So we take these common business climate themes and then we filter them through these 5 what we call economic development opportunities, and you can think of these as questions. So in the community, what's the most important thing to preserve? What's the most important thing to enhance? What can be exposed? What are some things that people may not know about an area that they should know about an area? What can be invested in and what can be capitalized on? So I'll give you a few examples of each. Preserve, you know, here in Martin County, you want to preserve that quality of life. You have a great quality of life here. It's not the hustle bustle of South Florida. And also preserving the waterfront, the extensive waterfront that you have here in Martin County is a huge asset. Whoops. Enhance, I don't know if you can see the black and white picture there on the bottom is a split image. That is the shoreline in Miami Beach. So, and then there's an article right there. It says South Beach, where dreams go to die. So when people think of South Beach, you think about South Beach today, you think about glitz and glamour and vibrancy, but it wasn't always like that. South Beach was a huge slum, one of the most dangerous areas of the country. And Kevin, who's our director of economic development, he comes from Miami Beach. He was actually former economic development director there. And so their game-changing opportunity, they needed to enhance their beach. You can see on the left, they had hardly any beach. And so the beach renourishment project to bring the beach back, widen the beach, that increased the tourism. It let people know that Miami Beach, you know, is on the way up, and led to a lot of investment that made Miami Beach what it is today. Expose. In Oakland Park, we worked with them on a branding campaign, and the most important thing for them to expose in their downtown was all of the culinary arts related uses. And so Sharon and her team, she'll talk about that a little bit more, but they created a culinary arts district and brand based on all of those uses. Invest. Parking is one thing. There's a lot of things that cities can invest in to promote redevelopment. Parking is one of them. Sharon's going to talk about this a little more, but Pompano Beach is a great example, that parking garage that Tim showed. And lastly, capitalize. We finished a project last year, an economic development plan for the city of Titusville, which is up on the Space Coast. And the most important thing for them to capitalize on was the 3 gazillionaires that they had in their backyard trying to capitalize on the privatization of space. And that's Jeff Bezos with Blue Origin, Elon Musk with SpaceX, and Richard Branson with Virgin Galactic in their space campaigns. And all of the spin-off businesses that came because of those companies being in their backyard. And so this last slide here kind of ties everything together. It shows how the economic development values, the drivers, the business climate themes, and those game-changing opportunities lead into real-world integration and prioritization. So I'll give you a real-world, even though it's hypothetical example, something that people can relate to. Craft breweries. Everybody loves a good beer. All the cities we work in say, we want a craft brewery. Because they are a great tool for redevelopment. They usually come into a building that may be obsolete, maybe not being used. They change the use of that building. They attract people into an area. So I'll use that as an example. Let's say we have John Doe brewer. This is his hobby, is brewing beers. He does it at his house, and he thinks he's got the best beer. And all of a sudden he says, I'm going to open up my microbrewery in town. I'm going to open up the best brewery. And I'm going to turn in my 9-to-5 life. I'm going to cash in my 401k, and I'm going to start this thing. And so breweries are a capital-intensive business. You've got to buy the equipment. You've got to pay to update the property. You got to pay your staff. You got to pay for all the ingredients. And so you all are familiar with the phrase, time is money. And so if this brewer, he goes to a city or county and he's applying to open his brewery, and if the city and county are dragging him through the mud on processes and zoning and permitting, that's going to eat into his cash flow and ultimately may make or break his business. So it all goes back to what we've been saying, that regulations can have a direct impact on a business's bottom line and can sometimes be a deciding factor on whether or not that business is viable. And so my last slide, while we look at a lot of the numbers, a lot of the data and hard facts, those are important things, but they don't always tell the full story. So it's important, to do that boots on the ground work, meet with the constituents, meet with the businesses, understand that their concerns are being met. So we like to throw this Einstein quote in there: not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. And so with that, I'm going to give it over to Sharon. She's going to talk about how she pins Jell-O to the wall and makes these CRA projects come to life.
Thank you, Farrell. I'm going to just not go with any notes because I don't know what page I would be on, so hopefully I don't stumble at all and I just keep talking to you. But yeah, I often call my job pinning Jell-O to the wall, because I deal, after we do the analysis and we do this, really the deep dive and deep study, now it's time to make it happen. And you've got the vision, you have the leadership, you have the team, you have a plan, everything's in place. So now how do you get it to move forward? So what I call this process that we go through is my 5 C's, where you collect the information and data, you connect people, places, and things that have never been connected before, you collaborate with organizations and groups that are on that same path. You find those people who are doing the same thing and shooting for those same visions, like the Tim Hernandezes of the world. And then you communicate that message and that strategy. You communicate back and forth, internally and externally. And then after you do all of those things is when you finally create. I get people, sometimes that'll call us, hey, we need a new logo. A new logo, I love to make them, is absolutely not going to change what happens in your CRA, or happens in your area. It's a great tool to use. But, that's why this process that we go through and that we, follow is about creating at the end. So I have 4 sections, just organizing it, and it is hard to read that here. But first is what connects people to place, placemaking, and positioning yourself in the marketplace, being inspired by nature and design, and employing underutilized assets. So first, one of the things that we always subscribe to is the Knight Foundation study that found they studied several cities throughout the country, and the top 3 things that connect people to place are the aesthetics, what does it look like, the social offerings, what is there to do, and the openness. How welcoming is the place? How welcoming does your city feel? Your people that are in your city, and then also your actual, city employees. How welcoming are you and to businesses and to people? It's not jobs. It's not some of the things that you would think that it is. So it's really important to kind of understand that. And we love the Knight Foundation and apply for grants a lot. So my Oakland Park story, which Farrell touched on, I'm very, very, very sad that Tim Hernandez group didn't win that project, because we did performas and everything on that site. But several years ago, this city had actually spent $30 million in their downtown infrastructure. They put in beautiful sidewalks and plazas and fountains and benches, and it was really, really pretty. And they had actually spent $70 million in the entire city and $30 million in that downtown area. And the city manager called us and he said, people still are not coming. we're still not coming. They're still not coming. What do we do? So we went to work and did this whole process that Farrell's talking about, really diving in and understanding what's the market, what's this current market situation, what's the market potential, what's here, what's authentic. And what I discovered during this research process is that there was an existing cluster of culinary related businesses. There were literally, if you want to go get your cabinets redone, you can go down Oakland Park Boulevard and you probably have about 20 different places that you could walk to and get 20 different estimates on getting new kitchen cabinet designs, or things like that. So it was there. If you wanted to have custom knives, there's a custom knife maker. There is a restaurant supplier. So all of these kitchen related businesses kind of came to the top. So we floated the idea. We looked at the infrastructure in the downtown and the existing spaces and thought, what could happen here? And could this be a culinary arts district? So we floated that with the community, with the commissioners and with the advisory board and the public input. And we said, what do you think about focusing on making downtown Oakland Park a culinary arts district and calling it the Tasteful Destination? And everybody loved it. They immediately bought in because they could feel it. They felt it. They knew that their city and their town, that was an authentic brand that they could own and really capitalize on. So within 2 weeks of launching that, of doing a presentation to the commission, we got a call from Funky Buddha. And they said, we're going to open up a brewery and we need about 20,000 square feet. And we saw your presentation and we can't imagine being anywhere better. There's no such thing that we know of yet as a beer district, which now there is. But a culinary arts district, that's amazing. So I say that because Farrell just finished doing an overlay district in North Miami Beach that made everything ripe for breweries and distilleries, correct? Yep. Specialized incentives and everything. So they know what they want. But anyway, so, we opened up a Funky Buddha within about less than 18 months. And today, it's not 18,000 square feet, but they took the entire old Sears warehouse that was the anchor on the edge of the downtown, right across the street from where Tim would have done that project. And they have 180,000 square feet today. There are now several restaurants in that downtown. There were none when we started. There are several restaurants. There's an urban farm. The urban farmer teaches farming and agricultural classes through the Parks and Rec department. And we had 2 campaigns, the Savory, Sweet, and Spicy campaign. And we had 2 messages, one to the consumer and one to businesses. And that's where you savor ideas, make sweet plans, and spice up your bottom line. Or you savor moments, make sweet memories, and spice up your life. So 2 campaigns, 2 messages, and it resulted in a very successful downtown now. Being inspired by nature and design, I'm going to go very quickly because are you looking at me like that, Susan? Being inspired by nature and design in Dania Beach, I just wanted to show how the physical environment of being that nautilus shell kind of translated into just programs and messaging that went out there. And the Nautilus has the perfect balance, and that's what they wanted to project, that they were a balanced area, balanced city. So some of those words were used, and they started an arts and seafood celebration. We discovered that there were 55 artists living in the downtown district. So we wanted to capitalize on the fact that there were artists living and working in that little downtown that was a pass-through. It was a drive-through between Hollywood and Fort Lauderdale. Today it's not. Today there's over $500 million in investment happening right now. Lots of investment into Dania Beach. It didn't happen overnight. It took about 7-8 years. They turned their city hall into a little gallery, and they have an opening every month. And they had artists do their signal boxes. So we created a campaign that used the images from the signal boxes and all the other things that was doing business in Dania Beach. And so we had, campaigns through like Florida Business Journal and things like that. So ultimately, we want to position places where businesses and the community can thrive. I'm now going to give you a case study about Pompano Beach. And I really do love that Tim went first, because he really queued me up for what I'm getting ready to show you. So in Pompano, it truly, and Susan can absolutely attest to this with me, because we worked together in Pompano, so she'll appreciate a lot of these slides. It was literally, their reputation was Pompano. And I mean, do you agree? Yes, absolutely. So, positioning and the connectivity plan, and I'll go through this. The culture shapes community, so what's authentic? Highlighting the historical significance and either celebrating or overcoming it. Community buy-in and activation and events. What are you going to do? What are those social offerings, right? And then spurring that developer interest. How do we get people? How could we possibly get developers to see that we were not a no city anymore? So, starting with this, we just looked at, what's authentic, what makes up a downtown, what makes up a good downtown, and we wanted to focus in this area. It's right at 95. And Atlantic Boulevard, and we named it the Downtown Arts and Innovation District. And, we looked at all the things that are, important to a healthy downtown, and kind of started with a visual like this. So this is the image, the aerial image of it, and you see those 3 stars. Those are the 3 cultural facilities that were planned. They were not there when we started all of this, so we planned them all. Like, okay, let's connect this area because we have an opportunity. We knew we were going to do a public library with a 20,000 square foot beautiful cultural center, and then we had 2 other buildings that the CRA owned or purchased. So we did a massing study as well. Again, back to all of that research, what can go there. At the very end, we're going to show you a video, and I want you to see that very, very innovative canal system that is the answer to the drainage. So sometimes in our CRAs, we might have an area, but for the developer's sake and for the opportunities that could exist there, you might have to come up with some really interesting and unusual ideas so that you're not wasting land on drainage. So this is very innovative, and it's in the development process now. And in the end, you'll see a cool video that we did to express it. So we identified our districts, our cultural area. This is all of our downtown in Pompano, and we started with the Bailey Hotel. So talking about historical significance, this Bailey Hotel in the 1920s was the place to stay, happening. It was a cool little, it's called Old Town today, a really cool little downtown in Pompano Beach. And we were able to envision that this could be something else. And the CRA was able to purchase that building. So we knew we wanted to save it. We knew we wanted to turn it into something else. So we started our visioning. And again, everything starts with the vision. So we could see that there were 12 hotel rooms upstairs. Those 12 hotel rooms could be perfect artist studios, and it had a beautiful downstairs space. But it started out looking like this. So this is what Susan and I walked into to say, okay, what can happen here? And this is some of the images under construction, just showing, how do you take it from that vision to implementation? Well, it takes money. We spent about $1.2 million on the renovation of this building. And then down the street, so we're talking about historical significance, right? So that hotel was a place where only white people could stay. And it's on the east side of the railroad tracks. And we all have those railroad tracks, that we're dealing with in CRAs in Florida. So on the west side of the railroad tracks, there was this building, the Ally House. It was a boarding house, and it was the home and the office and the business of the first African-American business owners in Pompano Beach. It was in eminent domain. It was going to be torn down. So the CRA, RMA acting as the CRA, we run the CRA down in Pompano Beach. We went and saved that building. Chris Brown, he's the one who did it. He saved that building, got it out of eminent domain. We purchased the building and worked with a historical group from that neighborhood and knew that we wanted to come up with a great vision for this space. And we spent about 1.7 million on this one, and we knew that this is what it could be. We could bring it back to life, we could put an outdoor stage and have a great performing arts venue. While the Bailey Contemporary Arts could be our visual venue, this could be the performing space. So we did our visioning board as well and came up with what would be fabulous, what would be authentic. We knew that people like Cab Calloway and Louis Armstrong had stayed there. They had been in that boarding house there, because when they were doing the Florida circuit and down in Fort Lauderdale, they were not allowed to stay at the Bailey. And this is Lamar Fisher. Again, I think Tim queued me up. I use this picture because we talk about leadership. None of this would have happened without the leadership and the willpower in the political environment in Pompano Beach. And he's a phenomenal leader, and he just kept everything on course as we're implementing the vision. And that's the Bailey under construction. I mean, the Ally. This is the Ally Cultural Arts Center today, and it's actually happening and vibrant and exciting, and it's a really great place for the community and for people beyond. So, the activation and the events. So we have the buildings. Again, if we renovated the buildings and didn't do anything, and if we were trying to renovate the area and didn't do anything, nothing would happen. Sometimes I call it, this is your fake it until you make it. You've got to create what is going to come. So, we set out to, in our Bailey Contemporary Arts building, we had from local to international shows, once every 4 to 6 weeks. And really focused on how we could, this Frontier show was a collaboration with a gallery in Iran. And then we, again, love the Knight Foundation, applied for a grant, and were able to bring the youth in that the CRA certainly, doesn't have the opportunity to pay for a program for youth in your community, but we were able to get a grant from the Knight Foundation. So we're teaching girls ages 8 to 18 audio engineering at the Ally building. So again, just looking at the whole redevelopment of the area and about people and the redevelopment of people's lives within this whole redevelopment project. And then at the performing, from national to local, on the performing arts side, I was really excited. We had Paxton Ingram from The Voice at the Ally, and who would have ever thought, right on MLK Boulevard, we get Paxton to come. So the other event that we created, and this came out of Susan starting Art Hall when she was the director of the Business Resource Center. And today, that Art Hall event that we started, a little arts event inside a Business Resource Center, and had that going on during all of the construction, we were getting people ready. We were trying to get them to understand, to be ready to start supporting and moving into this downtown area. Today, the event is called Old Town Untapped. We have on average 5,000 people a month that show up. We have about 50 vendors. We're incubating those vendors, and we have about 3 restaurants that have signed leases and 1 microbrewery that has opened, and we have 5 microbreweries in Pompano Beach, and Farrell's met with all of them, and they've said that they came to Pompano Beach because it was easy. The city made it easy for them. And so they got open faster. And so now all 5 of our breweries in Pompano Beach, they're not all inside the CRAs, but the 2 CRAs, but they're in Pompano. They all do tastings during this event. So we're able to cross-promote our businesses and really incubate new businesses. So one of the things is you want to be louder. Your voice needs to be louder than what maybe negative news says about you. So you have to be that voice that's always shouting from the rooftops all the positive news. And we did that. Again, we were trying to overcome that no environment in that Pompano, and there's nothing to do in Pompano, and it was that old blighted area, that redheaded stepchild, as Tim referenced. And we just kept shouting from the rooftops, and we certainly got in the news. And they said, the headlines were saying that, there's a new art scene breaking out in Pompano, Old Old Pompano, and there was a huge 2-page article in Art Hive magazine about the heart of innovation. It talked about the innovation district and the arts, and the new buildings and everything else. So those are the kinds of things you want to go for, and you want to make sure that your voice is louder than any negative voice, because you know the vision that you have and the leadership in the place where you're going. You know what you're going to be implementing. So this is just a picture of the cultural center and library. That's that third dot. It's now open. And the beautiful thing is that all 3 of those buildings now, all 3 of those cultural centers, we're now operating them under one umbrella. So there's this great collaboration that each of those spaces, and like I said, the cultural center is like gorgeous and beautiful and huge and has these big opportunities, right? And these other two spaces are little. So it's great that when you have an audience that would go to a cultural center, that we share those audiences and share our promotions of those. So spurring the developer interest and then investment. We had connected the spaces physically. I showed you that map, and the CRA also built the first building on MLK Boulevard. We knew no one would invest until we did, so we built the first building that had been built in over 50 years on MLK Boulevard, and we have 5 businesses in that space. After that happened, we were able to attract residential development that we just opened up, and several of our local artists have been able to get spaces in this building. It's right next door to the Ally Cultural Center on MLK Boulevard. The Koi built about 2 blocks away. And those townhomes are on the water, and what did they start at, Susan? Like $500,000. They're $500,000 to over $1 million. And again, in an area that you would never ever expect this to happen. And then now this is Adam Adache's property that's right behind Old Town. It's called Old Town Village, I think, or something like that. I can't remember the exact name of it, but that's under construction currently. There's a big, huge crane. And this is that beautiful parking garage on the east side. And but for the public investment into that parking garage on that 8-acre site, we would never have been able to attract Tim Hernandez and New Urban Communities to come in and build what they're building now in Pompano Beach and really transforming the waterfront as well. So with that, I just have this little video about the Innovation District and the waterways and the really interesting drainage system. And I think I click one more time.
The headlines are clear. Pompano Beach is changing before our eyes. When a city invests in itself, the private sector notices and starts investing too. So what's next? Building a downtown. It's 20 years in the making, so get ready. Downtown is now zoned for a mix of offices, new retail and restaurants, residential, hotels, tech and cutting-edge industry ripe for collaboration, culture, and people. An innovative waterway system to maximize the land available for development is in its preliminary design phase. And new and improved roads and safety features for pedestrians to easily move from the cultural center to Old Town to the Innovation District. Want to invest, build, live, work, or just be here? Call us.
So my favorite Einstein saying is, logic will get you from A to B, but imagination will take you everywhere. Thank you.
Okay, Sharon and Farrell, thank you very much. And Tim, previously, 2 excellent presentations. I had spoken earlier and said that I would take a few minutes at the end of the program to sort of review some of the progress that we've made in our CRAs. I'd like to start off by telling you that I'm very pleased to be able to represent the Martin County Community Redevelopment Agency, and I'm very happy to see how many people are here tonight taking time out of your busy schedules to support the efforts of the CRA on behalf of the communities we serve. The Martin County Community Redevelopment Agency oversees 7 distinct and unique CRA areas, each with its own flavor. Each CRA has a well-developed community redevelopment plan which sets the vision for future development. The county and the CRA have been steadily working towards bringing these visions to life, and we celebrate all of our achievements. In all 7 of our CRA areas, we've been busy over the years building roads and sewer lines, improving drainage, increasing public parking, connecting sidewalks, enhancing lighting, applying creative placemaking, and assisting with historic renovation. In other words, we've been building communities. Small businesses are springing up everywhere, and our waterfronts in Rio, Jensen Beach, and Port Solano are coming alive with activity. We are positioning our CRA areas for successful redevelopment to become strong economic bases, vital town centers, walkable, livable, connected places for residents, businesses, and visitors. This is an exciting time, as we have said previously this evening, for redevelopment in Martin County. With a professional staff, a dedicated independent community redevelopment agency board, vital community involvement through our neighborhood advisory committees, and the guidance and commitments to our citizens from the Board of County Commissioners, Martin County's CRA areas are on the move. It's time to up the ante. We are bringing the community 2 game-changing projects to be constructed in the next 18 months. The enhanced streetscape of Map Road in Old Palm City and the Bridge Road Town Center project in Hobe Sound. CRA is also working with Habitat for Humanity on 2 affordable housing projects. And I'm happy to announce this evening something that many of you may not know, but the 2017 Tax Act that Congress passed created opportunity zones across the United States. These are zones that are recognized that meet certain criteria that allow investors to invest unrealized capital gains without having to pay taxes on those capital gains. It's a tremendous opportunity. It's still being worked on at the federal government level, but I'm very happy to tell you that Rio CRA has been approved as one of those opportunity zones and is on the list that the governor sent to the federal government for approval. That's a huge incentive for investment in Rio. The message is simple. We are open for business. Now is the opportunity for all of us together to leave a legacy of smart, thoughtful, and successful redevelopment for the communities of Martin County. Tonight, we roll out the welcome mat and invite each and every one of you to join us in realizing the potential of these communities as we move forward, moving from vision to implementation. And again, I want to thank you all for being here this evening. Thank you very much.